And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you this week for RBLR Sports. Yet again, I don't know where else I would be, and especially don't know where else I would be without my usual co-host, Carlos. How are you doing this week, Carlos, on a Wednesday night that we are recording?
James, it is a chilly Wednesday night up here in the District of Columbia and in Tampa, from what I understand. So, hey, I guess I wasn't really, I don't know. I'm not missing much back home, I guess, right? I always say I'm like missing the warm weather and whatnot, but it's the same right now back home too. So,
minus a couple inches of snow, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. It was snowing the other day, which I really loved because it doesn't really snow much up here. So it's really cool when it does snow because then it's like the cold was, for something. It's not like worthless. If it's just cold for no reason, like it's lame. But if it's cold and there's a little bit of snow, it makes the day feel pretty cool. Got into a snowball fight on campus, which was a blast. Who knows, like just random stuff. Yeah, lots of a pretty good chunk of news, I would say, coming from the Rowdies front in the broader world of soccer, I'd say. Bit of Florida news in the USL as well, which is pretty cool, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So yeah, I've been keeping up with my phone. There's been stuff coming in. I'm pretty excited to talk about that in just a little bit. It's been a good night, James. What's going on in your life?
Yeah, like you said, it is chillier down here. It's not quite as chilly, so I've still been able to go out and bike ride and whatnot, and that was nice. I personally like going out in the cooler weather because it just seems nicer to go and run in for me. But I am assuming most people did not tune in to hear exactly how I prefer to work out when I get to actually do that. So let's move on, Carlos, to the actual stuff that people came here to listen to. This week in our off-season review, we are going to do yet another interview, and this is going to be back on topic with the Rowdies. Last week, obviously, we did an international break kind of interview with Madison Cox of the Puerto Rican women's national team. That was a great interview, and I do sincerely appreciate her coming on here and spending some time to talk with us. But like I said, this week will be more in tune with the Rowdies. So we will, I'm sure you have probably read the title of the episode by now, but if you haven't, for whatever reason, I'm going to wait to give you the details as to who it is that we had on this week and tell you that we have an interview coming up later on in the show. He is a former Rowdies player, though. He won the College Cup and MLS Cup in his career. I don't know if that narrows it down for anybody, but those are your two hints if, again, you have not read the title of this week's episode. Before we get into anything, though, please like and subscribe to us on YouTube or subscribe on any major podcast platform. Of course, we do appreciate when you can hear us every week. And please, of course, also interact with us on social media. We love when you do that. We are at RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, and some other ones that I am forgetting. Maybe we are on some forums that I am unaware of. Probably Reddit. I'm assuming there is an RBLR Reddit account. But yeah, now enough of that, Carlos. Let's talk about that news that you were mentioning here. Let's get into something that the Rowdies, there, like you said, there is concrete news to talk about with the Tampa Bay Rowdies for the 2024 season. We have it, folks.
Sir. Yes, sir, there is. Officially now, is one of the worst kept secrets on Twitter. Officially, we have signed Pacific Neon Gabriel. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to work on his name, and it's going to be a progression. We're all going to get better at it. But he's officially signed with the Rowdies. He's a Burundian national from the Canadian Premier League. He's making the transition to American soccer, coming down here to play for your Tampa Bay Rowdies. Really, really exciting stuff. Didn't produce a ton of goals last year. He had 1 goal and 3 assists, but is notably taking tons of shots. He had, I'm going to fact check myself right now, put up 36 shots across the course of the season, was getting heavily involved in the attack, and seems to be a great passer, at high completion rate on his passing. And yeah, just gets up the field well on the wing. I'm really excited to see what he can do. It seems like he is a type of player that Deon Harris was for us, and maybe could be, I don't know, a bit more on the offensive side of things. So we'll have to see what he officially can be for your Tampa Bay Rowdies. Obviously, he's a winger. and that's great to have because it seemed like we were lacking in that department, especially with Deion Harris heading out. So it's pretty cool, pretty exciting signing. I fully do not know too much about him, but I have been keeping up with or going back and looking at some of his highlights in the CPL. It seems like he could definitely be a good addition to this squad. But hey, we'll have to wait and see officially how that plays out during the season.
Yeah, exactly. And I do know a little bit more about Nyangabire's career so far, just because I had been following him from his days in the A-League. A prior contributor to RBLR, Chris Hockman, who is Australian, also had some awareness of his previous career. So, we have that insider information, if you will. We will get into that a little bit more, but I think this week, because there's so much to get to before we do our very secret, totally unknown interview, we need to get to that first. So I will save the Nyangabire inside info for another week here. Because meanwhile, we do want to talk about another or former Rowdy, I guess, who has retired now. And I'll turn that over to you, Carlos.
Yep, another piece of news that we just saw today, actually, right? Jake Arman has officially retired, from what it seems, from professional soccer. Wishing him all the best. We didn't really indicate what his next steps will be in his journey. Who knows? Hopefully he sticks around the Tampa area. It was great having him on this squad. It was a great contributor. He really seemed to gel well with this team, with the culture of this club. So I can fully see him sticking around and being in some way, shape, or form involved with the Rowdies. If not, maybe we see him at some games and once in a while in the future. It's always good to go back to a game and see players like Zach Steinberger or Jochen Graf sticking around and in the area catching a few games. Hope that's someone we see again. Jake Arman played with Charlotte Independence, played with the Rowdies, played college soccer for UMD, University of Maryland. Really, really great guy. And I'm wishing him all the best in whatever he takes up in the next steps in his journey.
Absolutely. I will second all of that. Of course, Jake Arman was a guy that we got to talk to only a couple of times for RBLR Sports and, post-game press conference kind of stuff. And, he was definitely as professional as anyone else. And I think the only thing that we can look at for 2023 is, it was an unfortunate series of injuries that really derailed his time in this past season with us. I think that we saw, a very good player from 2022 who had the potential to come and be a big contributor this past season. And unfortunately, that just never happened because of the problems with his injuries. And he never really got the chance to gel. I think that he had both the option to play as a left wing back or as a central midfielder. But like I said, it was just his unavailability that really hampered that. And, I don't know, obviously, what led to his retiring. As far as we know, it does seem like the Rowdies official account has confirmed, or it seems, I should say, like that is what they're saying. But yeah, I think that he is a very good player, and it's just really unfortunate that we couldn't get more time out of him, because I think if he had been able to spend more time on the field, we would have had even better memories of Jake Arman. He was definitely a very good player, and like you said, we wish him all the best. Hope he stays around the area, whether that's coaching, maybe some type of front office thing with the Rowdies. Who can say, because we don't have the background information there, but he's a very good guy, and we appreciate him for spending a little bit of his career in the Tampa Bay area and green and gold.
Absolutely.
So another little bit of Rowdies news here. There is some front office news that we can report here. The Rowdies have promoted COO Ryan Helfrich to be the new club president. And while I don't know all of the ins and outs of COO, club president, what that what that entails, I'm just going to go through a little bit of the press release here. The Tampa Bay Rowdies announced today that Chief Operating Officer Ryan Helfrich has been promoted to club president ahead of the upcoming USL Championship season. Obviously, that's what we already said. Today is an excellent day for our organization, said Rowdies Vice Chairman Brian Auld. Ryan is a talented leader who has demonstrated the ability to take the Rowdies to the next level. He has steered us through challenges and earned the respect and support of our front office players and technical staff. I know our partners and fans will join me in congratulating him on this well-deserved promotion. Carlos, that reads to me a little bit like Ryan Helfrich took over club president duties after Lee Cohen left and proved he was capable handling a lot of those duties. And then the head people in the front office were like, well, you've already been doing it for this long. Let's just make it official. That's the way that reads to me.
For sure. That's what it sounds like. To my knowledge, we just haven't really had someone with the official title of president, quote unquote,
right?
Since Lee Cohen left, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, like you said, it does seem like Ryan Helfrich has kind of been managing the ship since that happened. And I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if he was kind of operating in that role already. Certainly a well-deserved promotion for him. He's been here with us literally since the club kicked off in the modern era back in 2010. So yeah, he's been around since the beginning, certainly knows the in and outs of this club, has seen its good days, has seen its bad days,
right?
And certainly knows kind of where he wants to go with this team. Yeah, he was involved as in the ticket office as well, and sales and service, director of sales and corporate sponsorship. So he's been around, done a bunch of different roles with this club. And I think he's so well suited to kind of continue the good momentum this club has had in recent years, officially as its president. So I'm really happy for him. He's a fantastic guy. I've loved chatting with him. When I've had the chance at games, around Al Lang, after games, truly seems like the perfect man to kind of keep going with the momentum of this club. Again, knows the culture of the team and the fan base very well. So I'm really happy for him on a personal level, but I think also just excited for what he can do officially now as president of this club.
Yeah, I totally agree. Again, with everything you said there, and I think that if he can do, kind of the same job that he was doing most likely under Lee Cohen as the club president previously, and then over this past season in 2023, but continue that with the new manager, then we're pretty much set up for, at least the same level of success. And we're going to cross our fingers, of course, that it takes us that one step farther that we're all waiting to get to.
Give us the Open Cup.
Hey, actually, you know what? That's another bit of success that is out there that we might be looking at. If MLS wants to go with all their reserve teams, then that should be open for USL Championship teams, right? That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Last bit of Rowdies news here. This weekend on Sunday at 2 in the afternoon, the Rowdies will host Flamengo from Brazil and Philadelphia Union of MLS at Al Lang Stadium. So I already have my ticket. I reached out, or a couple of people reached out to me, I should say, and said that they were going. So if you have some time on Sunday, I would suggest making it your duty to go to this game, because you're going to see some good soccer out there. Flamengo and Philadelphia Union are both very good teams within their leagues. So these are two of the better teams in the Western Hemisphere, as I said last week. And beyond that, I mean, it's preseason, but that's how they're warming up. So you're going to get to see probably maybe a couple of the stars of tomorrow, so to speak. And that's another one of the cool things about these preseason games for me. For
sure. Also, Flamengo was not the winner of this past Copa Libertadores, but the one prior to that, so the 2022 Copa Libertadores. Yeah, certainly, I think by all accounts, the biggest team in Brazil. Yeah, really cool team. I love how they do things, how they operate. They have a cool little friendship with my club in Ecuador, Liga de Quito too. So I really always kind of pull for them. So it's really cool that they're going to be down there. It's unfortunate I'm not in town to see that, but yeah, like James said, everyone should definitely pull up to that. Soccer at Al Lang Stadium, and it's open to the public. It's not the Rowdies, but it's certainly soccer on the greatest field in the United States. So yeah, it should be a fun one for sure.
Yes, the greatest field indeed. And with that, Carlos, I think that we are all set to go to the interview. Beforehand, I just want to hit on our little ad read here and say liking and subscribing is free. But if you think you need some new threads coming up, you can support this podcast just a little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs that we've got cooked up there. There will be a link in the description, and you can use the promo code COYR for 10% off. So, other one. There we go.
There it is.
And yeah, please do check that out. I think that if you check it out, you will find something you like, and hopefully something you would like to purchase even. Help us out, like I said. So with that, Carlos, we will head into the interview that I did with Michael Nanchoff, and then we can discuss that on the other side here. All right, everyone. And here we are in that interview that we promised. Yet another interview over this off season, but this is one that I'm also very excited for. We are speaking tonight with Michael Nanchoff, a former Rowdies player. In addition to that, you played for Akron and won the NCAA championship. You played with the Portland Timbers, and you were a member of the MLS Cup winning team, if I'm not mistaken there. You had another stint throughout MLS and also played in Sweden, according to the transfer market anyway, and then ended your career with the Rowdies before now going on to be a coach at Akron. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, I'm very excited for this one. I will get into your background a little bit more, but I'll also let you explain that as best you can. Thank you anyway. And how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Appreciate you having me on. I feel honored. This is actually my first ever official podcast that I'm doing. So I'm feeling pretty special that it's with you. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Absolutely. I mean, RBLR, we've had a couple of good guests for, former Rowdies. And this is one that I've been, I would really like to talk to you for a number of reasons that we're going to get into in a bit here. But before I geek out any further, I just want to get started on, the most basic level and, go into your soccer background. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe you're from a soccer family, a footballing family. And if you could give us, what that is before we get into all of your career.
Sure. Yeah. Big soccer family. Pretty much the moment I came out of mom's womb, the ball was pretty much Velcroed to my foot. So I was very fortunate to have grown up in the family that I did. And I'm very fortunate to be around them to this day. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, small suburb called North Royalton, which is about 30 minutes outside of Cleveland. Mom, dad, brother, sister. I'm the youngest of the three. Both my brother and sister played collegiately. I always say they were the better players for sure. My sister was a stud. She was a heck of a scholarship player at Duquesne University, played 4 years. My older brother was a beast, definitely the most gifted athletically. He was a hell of a midfielder, All-American. He played at the University of Dayton, played for 4 years, had a nice career there. And my dad, there were certainly some really big footsteps to fill there. And to be honest, he's a guy that I've idolized my whole life. He's got a crazy history, pretty much moved over to the States with his parents as well as his brother, my Uncle Louis, who was a heck of a player too. Both of them had really steady careers, primarily in the NASL, a good bit in the MISL in the old school indoor days.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Really, really good. Definitely a couple stints with the U.S. national team, an unfortunate miss on the Olympics with the Olympic teams. So,
gotcha.
You know what? I idolize those guys a lot. I was a little too young to have watched them in person, or at least to remember. I do vaguely remember being dragged around to a couple games. But I do have all the videotapes and all that. I'm trying to piece together some cool old school VHS footage for my dad to put together as like a little compilation.
Gotcha. I that's super interesting. I think that a lot of people would appreciate a compilation, probably your family included, but definitely there is a fandom out there for, all kinds of old American soccer stuff. And I would consider myself a part of that. So if you ever do, let RBLR be part of the publishing as best we can.
Sure. No worries. Hey, listen, I can use all the help that I can possibly get with it. So if you can contribute that way, I'm game.
Well, I'm trying to learn stuff from Eureka, our producer. So you and I can both do that in the off season here. But to move forward now, obviously, you said that you grew up in Ohio and playing there. Ultimately, you stayed pretty close to home when it came to college as well, and you ended up going to Akron under Caleb Porter at the time. Now, this is where I originally actually knew who you were because. As I was telling you before we started, that's when I started watching college soccer, and that's when Akron got to be really good. So the year before, I guess, was 2009. That's the year that I think Blair Gavin and Teal Bunbury were on the team, but they left. And then in 2010, it happened to be the year that Akron really exploded. And, your whole team, you won the national championship, so that's pretty good. But not only that, your whole team effectively went pro. If I'm not mistaken, Akron set the record for the most players drafted in the first round, including yourself. and Caleb Porter went to be a professional coach as well. Well, I guess he was a professional coach, but in the professional ranks in MLS too. So if you could walk us through getting to Akron, what it was like being part of that team, and then winning the national championship, because it includes a couple of my favorite American players of all time, at least certainly one who's still playing for Columbus.
Yes, for sure. No, I'm happy to talk about it because it was certainly a special time for me. Definitely a time that I'm grateful for, because without it, I probably never would have made it to the pros, if I'm being quite frank with you. But it was pretty simple. I grew up going to all the Akron games. I probably didn't realize how freaking good my dad and uncle were at Akron until I really got there.
Yeah.
And you're really consumed in the environment. You see all the accolades, you see the Hall of Fame, you see the All-Americans, but at the same time, you just hear all the respect from people that are just absorbed in the community, to alumni. So for me, it was really special. But in terms of getting there, I don't want to say it was super easy. Obviously, I was a local kid who wore the Akron Zips with a lot of pride, right? Had the jerseys growing up, went to all the games. And when I reached out to the initial coach, when I was still playing youth club for my dad with the Cleveland Internationals, the coach at the time was Ken Lola. And he had a couple really good seasons. I think it was 2 years prior to me even going there. They were pretty much ranked number 1 or 2 the entire season. And I mean, if it ever made it certain that I wanted to go there, that was it. I was like, man, these guys are on top.
Yeah.
You like the style that they're playing. And that's when I really started busting my ass. I'm like, man, I got to make it. I went to all the games. I knew how difficult it would be. I knew how high of a level it was. But if I'm being fully transparent, Ken Lola didn't like me at all.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, didn't like me at all. I emailed, I reached out, really never got anything back from him. In fact, the one game he came to was a state cup match, and I knew he was going to be there. And for me, in my mind, it was more of like a now or never type of thing. And I balled out, killed it, crushed it. Team won. We dominated against one of the best teams in the state, one of our rivals. And I thought, man, you know what? I think I just gave myself the best chance. Little did I know, he still had zero interest whatsoever.
Oh, my.
So then fast forward a couple years, and when did Caleb get there? I got there in 2007. So 2006 was Caleb Porter's first season. So after 2005, Ken Lola left after, I think it was an Elite 8 appearance. He left for the University of Louisville. And based off of what I heard, you don't have to quote me on this directly. He never told me, but I heard from multiple people. He said, I don't think we can win at Akron. I have to go elsewhere. I have a really good opportunity at Louisville. And
interesting.
He did well down at Louisville, but in comes Caleb Porter. Caleb Porter has no idea who I am. I remember I'm sitting in a study lab in high school, and one of the instructors there was like, hey, what are you thinking about school? I said, well, I'll be honest. I really want to go to Akron, but just not having any luck. Coach doesn't like me. He said, well, there is a new coach. I said, yeah, I know. I'm not really too sure about it. She said, well, why don't we send an email? Sent an email, really interested, introduced myself. At that time, you don't have video footage.
Yeah, right.
Right. Like you would think that 2007 is not that long ago, but it was.
It was a pretty different world, yeah.
Yeah, there's no huddle, there's no Y Scout where you can just click a link, open it up, and you're like, damn, he's good or he sucks, right?
Right.
So did my best to explain myself, introduce myself, click send, and within 5 minutes, I get a response from Caleb. We'd really love to have you on campus.
Wow.
Why don't you come for a visit? Our staff would love to meet you. We'd love to show you what we're all about. And I can't remember when exactly I went, but the visit was turned around rather quickly. My dad and I went, spent the whole day with Caleb Porter and his staff, showed me what they're all about. I knew what they're all about. He didn't really have to sell me on it.
Yeah.
And honestly, he offered me a scholarship right up front that day. And it didn't take a whole while whatsoever before I say, you know what, I want to be an Akron Zip. So there's a lot of people out there, and we can dive into this some more if you want. Caleb Porter, to a lot of people, is a big love-hate relationship, but I got so much respect for that damn dude. Gave me a great chance at the collegiate level. He's a winner. He's determined. He can be a bit of a prick sometimes, but at the end of the day, damn well all that dude cares about is winning, and he cares about his players. So that was kind of my story getting to Akron. And then, like you said, man, we had a really successful 4 years. And 2007, I didn't play a whole lot. In fact, I didn't start one game. That next spring was massive for me. There was a couple tough individual meetings saying, hey, okay, we're expecting a lot more out of you, and we expect you to bring it next fall. And sophomore year was a heck of a lot better. Probably started in 3/4 of the games. We ended up losing in the Sweet 16. And then comes 2009, national runner-up. That was really difficult because I ended up pulling my hamstring in the NCAA playoffs. And
gotcha.
That was brutal. I thought if there was ever a chance I can go to the next level, that was the platform of which I can use, right? On ESPN, playing against UNC, ended up playing Virginia in the final and ended up losing and coming up short in PKs. But once we're able to turn that around and be extra motivated to come back in 2010 and do it all over again, but this time cross over the finish line with a win, that was sweet. It was awesome.
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I remember that team, and I think that, there was almost all of you guys ended up going pro, so you can immediately tell the talent that's on the team. But yeah, I think that it was so well put together too, because you've already mentioned Caleb Porter, and he has been a fixture in MLS ever since that time, including anytime he's lost a job, ultimately it's been filled pretty quickly, and he's just been signed up for the New England Revolution too. So there's clearly a lot of respect, and I also remember from afar, idolizing the way that Akron played at the time, and seeing that, there are a lot of good players on this team who can, they can do stuff with the ball, but they're also very smart about how to go about it. And I mean, if I can just take one more quick question, at least related to Akron, playing with Darlington Nagbe, what was that like? Because I've actually, one thing that I like to do when I'm individually interviewing players, is ask them who the best player ever was that they have played with. And for someone who was with Atlanta United, he named Darlington Nagbe, and I was like, oh man, that's awesome. But yeah, I just wanted to get your perspective on that too.
My perspective, James, is really, really simple. That dude is the most valuable U.S. player of all time. He is so talented, so well-rounded, so good at everything he does that he just makes everybody so much better. And the funny thing is with Darlington, and we joke about this all the time. In fact, I just saw him last week. He was up here back home visiting family. So he stopped by with his wife, 3 kids, and 3 crazy dogs. And we're kind of BSing a bit and joked a little bit about how we forget that he actually played striker at Akron. So at least that last year, we pretty much played a 4-4-2 diamond, and we had Darren Maddox, really fast, electric striker who scored 20-plus goals as a freshman, which is really hard to come by.
Yeah.
Almost unheard of. And Darlington was just the floater. He was a guy you could literally send a laser of a ball into his chest, and he'll just absorb it like it's nothing. Like, you could throw 100 eggs at that dude, and not one of them will ever split. But the most important thing about that kid, he's just an unbelievable guy. And so many people question, why does he turn down national team call-ups? There are some people that were saying it's disrespectful to your country. But at the end of the day, someone that says he's passing up a U.S. call-up just to be with family and spend time with kids speaks volumes about who they are as a person. So can't speak highly enough about that guy. He's a baller, still is. I joke. I say he's going to be playing until he's like 45. So don't think it's coming up anytime soon. His retirement, at least. He's still got some years in him.
Yeah, I'm not one of the ones who is bitter towards him about his national team playing career, but I am certainly one of the ones who wishes that it was longer because I think you're absolutely right that he's one of the better players that America has probably ever had available to it, and it's really unfortunate that his time with the national team coincided with what was probably one of our lowest ebbs. But that's not, that's neither on him nor really the subject of what we're getting at here today. So before we move on to the Rowdies, I do want to speak with you about the rest of your professional career in MLS specifically. So you were part of the Portland Timbers, and I believe you were part of the Portland Timbers team that made it all the way to the final and won there too. So if you could go over, getting drafted, getting going to the Timbers, and then how the rest of that year went, and ultimately, I guess the rest of your MLS career.
So I was drafted. This is crazy. Once that championship happened in 2010, everything happened so damn fast. It was such a whirlwind. I heard grumblings that I was going to get a pro deal, but didn't know if it was going to become a reality. And within 1 month's time, championship is done. Go home, meet with an agent, sign with an agent, go to Baltimore, which is where the draft was at that time when it was still in person, and wait there, nervous as hell, waiting to get your name called. And it was actually Vancouver Whitecaps that selected me 8th overall in the 2011 draft. And that was 2011, 2012 was my first 2 years in Vancouver, expansion club. And that was a club that was still growing, still evolving. But I was really fortunate to have started my first 2 years there with a Generation Adidas contract. I always say it was certainly the number one selling point to both of my parents, that because I was leaving school early, technically, that my education would be paid for. And I could finish my degree from afar, online, whatever it may be. And that was actually the case. I was fortunate enough to have academic support and be able to graduate from Akron while living in Canada, way in the West Coast. But I enjoyed my time in Vancouver, man. Beautiful city. The people in the organization were awesome. I always say Canadians are too nice. They're too nice, but they're lovely people, treated me really, really well. And for a young kid who's just trying to figure out how to make it and figure out really how to be a pro in a whole new world when you're completely on your own. Yeah. They were super accommodating. So I speak highly of the club. I always will. I wanted to play more for sure. In fact, I missed the first probably 4 months of the 2011 season with a groin injury. So I played with a torn groin my last year in college and kind of trickled over into the pros and kind of got off on the wrong foot. I pretty much stayed back in my apartment doing rehab with a personal trainer while the whole team was getting some sunshine in Arizona during preseason. So that kind of sucked, but you also learn a lot in that moment too. Like, I remember sitting in an apartment, didn't get paid yet, didn't even have my first paycheck, and I just had a little futon with like a 16-inch TV. And thank God I had my Xbox because I just played FIFA the whole time. But loved my time there. And when they didn't want to pick up my option year, in comes Caleb again. Honestly, I reached out to him and said, listen, I'd love to play for you again. That's when he just had signed with the Portland Timbers coming from Akron. So 2012 was his last season. So 2013, I have a chance to go there, prove myself in preseason without a contract in order to earn a contract. And you know what? It was kind of humbling, to be honest, right? You step foot, first 2 years in the league, guaranteed contract, decent money, probably a little more fortunate than a lot of the rookies that I played alongside. But at the end of the day, I had to take a few steps back just to kind of gain my ground again. And those 3 years in Portland were sweet. They were awesome, man. The fans are nuts. They're crazy. Timbers Army, they're wild, but like they're just too nice, man. Like they're just we freaking love you. Like, like they would do anything. They'd absolutely kill for their players. And I can't speak highly enough about them, man. Like, I just remember walking out of the locker room, which was right below the Timbers Army, kind of offset behind the goal there. And the stadium's just rumbling, like the turf's rumbling, like you hear the drums, you see the smoke, and I'll never forget that, man. There were some really good memories. In fact, I remember the first game was against New York Red Bulls when Thierry Henry was still there. And if I'm not mistaken, we went down 3-0, and that was Caleb's first ever regular season match as a pro. And I remember came into the locker room and he goes, just going to be honest with you guys. If you don't think that I believe in this group, then get the F out.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming back and we're winning this thing. And we didn't win, but I'll tell you what, that place was just exploding. It's coming back and having 3 unanswered goals to tie it 3-3. I remember Darlington scored a ridiculous goal. So that was sort of my very first memory in Portland. And then the very last was the MLS Cup, which took place in Columbus. And man, I'll tell you what, that team was awesome. We obviously just picked up momentum at the right time. Sometimes you just have to catch some fire going into the playoffs. And that's exactly what that group did. And listen, man, to end up, finishing up in the MLS with a ring is really, really special. A lot of people say that I downplay it too much for whatever reason. That's just kind of who I am. But at the end of the day, that's something I'd be really damn proud of to tell my future kids and future grandkids.
Yeah, I don't have any corollary to say to that, because that is really truly an awesome thing to have in your trophy case. Essentially, there's very few people ultimately who can say that they made it professionally, of course, and then if you whittle it down even further, there are going to be a lot fewer people who can say that they have any type of trophy. And the MLS Cup and the ring that comes with it, I think that is pretty awesome. What were your highlights of getting through that playoff run, and how did you see it from your perspective?
Man, I'll tell you, it was just like, it was surreal. I remember the game. We had to go on the road to play Dallas, and that was a good Dallas team. And playing Dallas, I don't care what time of the year it is, it's always a tough place. And I remember that game. A lot of people said we're the underdogs, but that's exactly kind of how we wanted it. Mm-hmm. I do remember standing on the stage, on field, hoisting the Western Conference trophy, and all the dudes on the team with their Colombian flags, Argentinian flags, just bouncing up and down, smokes flying. Definitely a handful of beers in the locker room. Definitely a handful of beers on the flight home. And the reception that we had coming back, just winning the conference, was like, you honestly would have thought you won the World Cup. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, the Timbers Army, they're nuts, man. Like, they're solid. So obviously a lot of good memories from that season. It's tough to really just pinpoint one, but at the end of the day, when you can be in the locker room after winning an MLS Cup and hugging one of your childhood friends like Darlington and a couple of Akron boys that were also on that squad, like, how sweet is that? Like, it was so cool.
Yeah, that's again, there's really no comparison, but that just sounds awesome to be able to experience something like that. And it's very cool to hear about as well from my perspective. To get into the because usually, obviously, we are a Rowdies podcast. Over the off season, we do all these interviews and we ask everybody about their whole careers. But to get specifically to how you're related to us here at RBLR, you did ultimately join the Rowdies afterwards. And I did want to speak with you about, I think it was 3 seasons that you played in Tampa Bay. And specifically, before we got into how those years went, I wanted to know how you were put in touch with the Rowdies. If you had any familiarity with the team, or any knowledge of the group beforehand.
So I definitely had familiarity of the club. I mean, Listen, my dad and uncle, they played a handful of years in the NASL.
I was wondering if that might have crossed over a bit.
Right. And that's obviously when that was the last season NASL was in effect in 2016 before we kind of trickled into the USL. But essentially for me, like the three clubs you would always hear about in the NASL, you'd hear about the Rowdies. Like at times you hear about the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. And of course you hear about the Cosmos.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
We obviously know who played there, what kind of talent they had. And, man, honestly, I don't really know how it happened, but I do remember getting a call from Perry Vanderbeck at the time. And I was packing up all my crap in Portland, not knowing where I was going to go. I remember to this day when I flew back, it was probably the first and only ever ice storm that the Pacific Northwest really, really experienced. And I pretty much had a week to move all my crap out of my apartment and pretty much come back home to Cleveland to figure out what the heck I wanted to do next.
Mm-hmm.
In my heart, I still wanted to play, but at the same time, if I had to come to grips with hanging up the boots a little bit earlier than I want and moving back home and finding a job, then so be it, right? But I remember getting that phone call, packing one of my last suitcases, and Perry's like, "Hey, it's Perry Vanderbeck. Nice to meet you." He's got such a distinct voice,
Yeah, he does.
I can just picture the perm on his head right now. But he's like, "Hey, just want to let you know we're really, really interested in bringing you to Tampa Bay. So what are your thoughts?" And I was just like, "What? Like, should we talk contract?" I was like, "Well, first and foremost, yeah, I am really interested. You guys have a hell of a club. It's freaking Florida. Like, you're living in St. Pete." I was like, "Listen, man, I don't have an agent. I'm pretty much sorting out contracts by myself. But yeah, let's talk first thing next week. I'm kind of in the midst of moving right now." And honestly, we spoke the next day, and that contract was pretty much done, sorted. And I knew where I was headed, right? So I was essentially able to move all my stuff from my apartment in Portland to I shipped it cross country on a big semi trailer and ended up there sometime in January of 2016. And here I am, a Tampa Bay Rowdy, man. Like, it just happened out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I know Perry Vanderbeck through my dad actually, and so we've had Perry on here before, and Carlos, our other co-host, knows Perry through church. So it seems like almost everyone in this region knows who Perry Vanderbeck is through one means or another. But it's just hilarious that he has this much influence over pretty much everything, I guess.
Yeah, for sure, He's a legend, man. He's a legend. He's a name, or it's definitely a name that's certainly well respected in the soccer world.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So to get into now your time with the Rowdies, you're on the team, you're in St. Pete, all that, what was it like here? What were the 3 years as far as you remember them? And, the big questions that I have are, what are your takeaways from the fan base playing here? I know that things have changed since then, obviously, but I don't know exactly what the conditions were like for your time here and what you remember, whether that be fondly or not.
It was honestly all fond. The 3 years were awesome. So when my now wife, we were only dating at the time, we met in Portland. And when I said, "Hey, I have an opportunity to play in Florida, are you interested in coming?" She was like, "Yeah, I'll pretty much go anywhere you go. I support you. I believe in you. I believe in your career, and I trust you. Let's do it." But of course, there's naturally going to be some reservations, like, how different is it going to be?
Yeah.
It's the Southeast, it's Florida. And it wasn't just so much like a weather or climate thing, right? It was more so like, how receptive is the club going to be? Because Portland was special. Like I said, the fans were really embracing of that whole squad. And honestly, when I first got there, I remember my wife coming to the first game, and I think we were playing. I don't know if they were technically in the 11 then. They probably were, and she ended up getting lost I don't know how, in downtown St. Pete.
Oh, okay.
Coming across a fan, whether they were in Ralph's Mob or Skyway Casuals. Are they still
Yeah,
they still around?
Mm-hmm. They are.
So someone for there heading to the game, she was like, "Where am I going?" And just walked her right to the game. It's like, "Here you go." She's like, "All right, this place is home." She's like,
Okay.
all it took is one person. I'm happy. I don't care that it was piss and rain outside. This is going to be sweet. So honestly, man, like, it's cool for me to say that even though it was only 1 year, I was still able to say that I played in the NESL. Like, I think it's still pretty cool. You can say you played against teams like the Puerto Rico Islanders,
Yeah.
Cosmos. At the time, who else they have? Like Rio, Oklahoma.
They are infamous on the internet for not all the best reasons, obviously, but yeah, they are well known somehow.
Yeah, I think I know what you're getting at. But like, I mean, who else we got? Fort Lauderdale Strikers. That was before they unfortunately folded. Geez, man, it was awesome. Like, I loved it. And then, like, in comes Joe Cole. You're like, hey, I know that guy. I've heard of that guy. I've seen
Right.
a couple banger goals that he scored. Watched that guy for years, and you're like, am I really going to be playing alongside Joe Cole? Like, there's no way. And I remember we went to England for a preseason trip. Had an unbelievable experience at Nottingham Forest. They really took good care of us. We were there for a week, and then we played the English national team training ground. It was at St. James's Park or St. George's, I think it is. So we were there for a week. Unbelievable experience.
Wow. Yeah.
That was awesome. Jeez, man, I'm glad you asked us. I almost forget about that. And God, weren't the seasons even split in spring? Like, it was like partially.
I believe they were to begin with. Yeah, I think that's the way that it works, because if I'm not mistaken, Stuart Campbell was your coach for the whole time there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Neil Collins took over in 2018, and by then it was in the USL, and that's when it was obviously the Rowdies at that point were not playing in the split seasons.
That's right. Yeah. Stu Campbell. He was my coach a year and a half. Man, the story about Neil taking over still kills me to this day. I will never forget playing in an Open Cup game against the Jacksonville Armada. The game was delayed. It must have been 3 or 4 hours. I mean, it was torrential downpour. And some way, somehow, the grounds crew were able to salvage the field in Jacksonville. We played the game, unfortunately lost. I remember Stu was gutted. I felt something was going on. We couldn't get a charter bus last second, so it looked like we were on a party bus, I think, going through the game and coming back. And something just felt off. And I think it was that next day we got called in for a meeting in the locker room and said that we were going to be relieving Stu of his duties. Thank you for his service. Wish him the best. And then it was like 10 seconds later, Neely Collins walks in with his slacks and his button-down shirt and dress shoes, and was like, we want to introduce you to your new head coach of the Rowdies. And we were just like, I was just drinking beers with that guy like 4 nights ago, you know? So it was all surreal. But listen, man, it was a great experience for me for the short time that I played under Neely. Even him as a young coach, trying to figure out really how to make it, how to gel as a gaffer, for a lack of better words. I always knew that he was going to have a damn bright future, and we got into it a couple times. We did as players, for sure. We were both really fiery players, played with a lot of passion, a lot of heat, definitely bitched at each other, but in a good way. And definitely did the same when I was a player and he was a coach towards the end of my time there. And I remember walking in a year later when I was done playing. I was down there for a showcase, walked straight to L. Lang, walked in, gave the GM a hug, and gave Neely a big hug. And I was like, love you, man. You know, like, it was sweet. It was awesome.
Yeah. What is the transition like for someone who is going from a player to a coach? Because I don't imagine that it happens very frequently, that it's literally one day to the next. But in Neil Collins' case, he came in as what would have been a more veteran player, obviously, playing in or close to the Premier League. I don't know how many games he actually had in the Premier League, but, considered one of the best leagues in the world for all, pretty much all the time that we've had the Premier League. So he's coming from this place where I'm assuming most people are looking up to him, and he's at an age when you can do that too. And then all of a sudden, obviously, he's your coach. So what is that transition like for you as a player who is one day his teammate and the next day you're like, okay, now you're, making the decisions for me?
Honestly, it probably took like a solid week, and I can probably speak for the majority of the locker room, especially the younger guys that didn't really know what was going on. You're wondering, Stu's gone. Stu brought me in. Am I gone? Am I safe here?
Right.
I could honestly say the first week was like just weird. It was honestly just weird. Like, I don't want to say surreal, but you're like, wait, like, is this permanent or is it temporary? Like, you have to understand how weird it is to go from like drinking beers with a guy, like going out, have a nice night out, celebrating a win as players in the locker room. And then next thing you know, it's like, hey, I'm going to tell you what to do.
Right.
You're either in or you're out of the lineup. Like, he obviously knew that was going to be weird for him.
Yeah.
Like, you're not accepting a job like that at any level if you know you're not going to deal with that sort of transition, right, from player to coach. But I'll tell you what, man, he handled it really well. Whether he masked it really well or not, he never came off as being insecure, never came off as being unconfident. He obviously had an idea in mind rather quickly what he wanted to do with the team for the future. And obviously did really well there with his time. But like, man, it was weird. That's the best way to word it. But you could tell right away that Neely was driven. He's committed, and he was gonna bring some of that damn Scottish passion to the Rowdies. Him and his damn Iron Brews or whatever. He has that. So yeah, weird, but also cool at the same time, man.
Yeah, his Iron Brews. That was it's become kind of a fan favorite drink now. And yeah, we will, try to use it as a good luck beverage, but unfortunately we haven't quite gotten exactly where we want as a club since then. I'm assuming that, everyone is still working towards that same goal. Maybe a little less Iron Brew at the same time, but now that brings us to the last big question that I had for you. And obviously, since you have transitioned yourself into a coaching career, you have gone back to Akron, and I believe you're an assistant coach there now. So could you describe also what that was like, and what the decision was like ultimately to get yourself back to Akron, where you have your roots already?
So it was really sweet. It was I would say bittersweet at first, because anytime you're ending your playing career after all those years, you're just like, am I making the right decision? Am I gonna regret it? I obviously knew that I wanted to be in the game for as long as possible. Yeah. I grew up in a youth club that my dad started and ran for 30 plus years. And I pretty much started coaching when I was 12, right? I would take U8 teams, U9 teams, and kind of work my way up. And I was actually very fortunate to get some solid experience with Tampa Bay United. Blake Wagner, who I actually played with in Vancouver for one season before he hung up his boots and got a gig back home in his native Tampa. He gave me a job at the academy. I took over the U12 age group, which was awesome. I loved it. They were so much fun, man. Bunch of little pipsqueaks with so much personality. And for me, I was like, man, this is like even more confirmation of what I want to do exactly with my next steps. And to be quite honest with you, the plan was to come back home and essentially take over my dad's academy. That's why I was going for my license. I went for my B license, was going to go for my A, and then eventually a director's license. And then he started getting up there in age, and he ended up pretty much leasing out his club to another local club in this area. And I don't want to say it dissolved, but kind of came with, less opportunity. And I kind of needed to figure out what the heck was next. So sure enough, I reached out to the now head coach, my now boss at Akron, Jared Embick. And I asked him at that time, Is there anything available, anything open? I'll pretty much come back and work in any capacity, even if it's a water boy. I don't care. And he said, honestly, we don't have anything right now, but I can assure you, if something opens up, we'll open up a door for you. Sure enough, man. Calls me a couple months later, says, hey, got a coach moving on. We have an assistant role open for you. Do you want to come back? And I was like, yes, this is it. Like, to have an opportunity to come back, work on my alma mater, a program and a team that I really believe in, right? Mainly because of the style, was very appealing to me. So then it was like, hey, to my wife, Katie, we're moving to Cleveland. Let's go. So it's been really special. I started in 2019. We've had some really good years. The whole idea is to still win a national title. And I've learned really, really, really quickly that I love the college game, man. I love all aspects of recruiting. And for me, coaching in general is sweet because I think I'm really fair when I tell guys, if you don't want to believe me when I tell you what to do, just trust me when I tell you what not to do. Because I probably had more downs than ups in my pro career. And I'm not going to act like I know it all, man. The reality is I can give you some shitty situations that I don't want to happen to you.
Sure.
So for me, I learned with that approach, I was able to gain a lot of trust from the guys. I think in their mind, they were probably excited to have an ex-pro and a national champ come and be an assistant coach. But at the same time, they probably anticipate some sort of arrogance. It's like, no, I'm not going to be arrogant, but at the same time, I'm going to bring my passion.
Sure.
I'm going to bring my personality. And I love it here. I want to be here for the foreseeable future. It's home. My whole family's around. And yeah, man, I'm always coming down to Tampa Bay to recruit some guys there. So next time I'm down there, we got to grab a beer or something.
Absolutely. I would honestly love to do that. That is something that would be really cool. But yeah, if you're ever in town, do let me know that. A question I had for you about Akron, if I'm not mistaken, Jared Embick took over from Caleb Porter when he left.
Yep, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, Jared was him and I got there at the exact same time, actually, in 2007. So he got there as the top assistant. I got there as a true freshman. So we've had a really good relationship all these years. And he was a guy, even if I was struggling or I was a little low on confidence in the pros and needed some ideas on how to just ramp up my game, he was always a phone call away, man. The dude is just like, he's a brainiac. Like, he's just a total tactician. A lot of people joke and say that when we won it all, that Caleb was like just like the heartbeat enforcer, like soldier of the group, but Jared was the brains of the operation.
Gotcha.
How true is that? I won't speak to that, but based off of me working with the guy on a daily basis, how he plans trainings and just his whole vision, I'm like, man, like this dude's got it. And I'm very lucky to be able to work for a guy like that, especially in a young coaching career.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from there. Do you think you have ambitions to ultimately be a head coach yourself and, make it through somewhere at college, even if it's not necessarily Akron in the future?
100%. That's been the role. I'm a natural leader. I want to lead a group. I'm okay with admitting I'll get things wrong, but at the end of the day, knowing how much I want to win, I'd love to take a group and go the whole distance, man. And for me, if it's college, that'd be awesome. If it's Akron, holy smokes, incredible. I'm here. Like, to get a head coaching gig in your hometown, let alone your alma mater, like, it's very difficult to come by. But if that means that I have to kind of explore some, worlds unknown, then so be it. But at the same time, I'm good with right now. I'm bought into what we're doing as an assistant, and whenever that comes, if it does, I'm game. I'm open to it.
Well, yeah, we obviously wish you the best of luck here. And the only other thing that I'll say is I was watching the MLS draft, and if Joel Sangwa is still looking for a team, maybe, point him down south, tell him the Rowdies might be looking, because I don't know what Robbie Nielsen's plans are for the back line, but he does look like a pretty good center back.
He's a damn. I'll text the guy right now. Actually, I'll tell him.
Yeah.
I just spoke with James. I was just on this podcast. In fact, it's one of the clubs, one of the first ones that I brought up to him once he wasn't drafted, unfortunately, in MLS. I said, listen, man, you can probably go in the USL, make some good money, probably more money than you can make in the MLS. So, like, go to Tampa. So
hey, that's perfect. I think that everyone listening to this is going to be looking him up now and making sure that we've got someone working on the inside for us.
Yeah, for sure. I got you, man.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you so much. You've been very, very gracious with your time, and we always appreciate that. I had tons of questions, and you have taken the time to answer all of them. So we really appreciate that. If you ever, do want to come back, we will always have you here. And like you said earlier, if you do want to come down anytime, let me know. I would love to grab a beer with you. That'd be great.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Thanks so much for having me on. Like I said, this is my first podcast, and I had a freaking blast. Thank you.
And there was that interview with Michael Nanchoff. I know, obviously, we had the chance to talk to him, Carlos, and you were not able to join us. But do you, how much do you remember of Michael Nanchoff's time at the Rowdies? I remember trying to seek him out personally. I think that my pre-fandom of him probably came out in that interview. But I wanted to know how much you remembered of him from beforehand.
I loved when he was on the Rowdies. I mean, he was always a consistent guy. He wasn't someone that you would expect to put up like ton of goals or anything. That wasn't really ever who he was, but he was really a consistent winger. Played on the midfield when he was out there. I feel like I'm remembering him playing on the left more than anything. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah.
So I love when he was here in the short time with the Rowdies. He was here for like 3 seasons. It was 2016. In fact, for myself, definitely 2016 to 2018. I mean, he was always a consistent guy. So I was pretty happy with him when he was here. And now he's kind of in that coaching role with Akron, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So now he's officially coaching against my Georgetown University Hoyas.
That's right.
Big East, after they made that move to the Big East. So unfortunate that they didn't have a chance to play us this season. It would have been so cool to see him come up here to DC and get a chance to chat with him. But for future seasons, they're now in the same conference, and it's really cool to keep an eye on that. I certainly think that his coaching career will take off because I mean, he seems to be doing really well with Akron. Akron is such a really powerful college soccer program. So hopefully that kind of rockets him into a bigger and better coaching future if he sticks with that. It'd be really cool to see him come back one day for the Rowdies for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And to bring it back to Georgetown with you there, I know that you were suggesting that the Rowdies go and hire a bunch of Georgetown players for this upcoming season. I put in a word with Mr. Nanchoff that he suggests to any of the undrafted Akron players that maybe they come and join the Rowdies for the 2024 season as well. So he said that he would do that. And he said that he would do that. And, if we get any players from either the Zips or from the Hoyas next year, we know who to thank, either Michael Nanchoff or Carlos Ruiz.
Big East soccer is different, man. I'll tell you what, if you start following the world of college soccer, and I know there's not a ton of people out there who do, but if you do, it's a really fun time, and this conference is really loaded. And you can get a couple sightings of Michael Nanchoff on the sideline if you're watching some Big East games. So check it out for sure. Who knows? Maybe we end up with a couple of them this offseason. There's still plenty of time to go here. I wouldn't be surprised if we go out and go grab a couple more wingers. So if that's from Akron or from Georgetown or from any other, college soccer program, I'd honestly be pretty happy. I'd love to take advantage of that really impressive pool of talent that sometimes gets overlooked, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree. It is unfortunately overlooked, especially at the USL level. Well, with that, folks, that will wrap up our episode tonight with a couple of bits of Rowdies news and an awesome interview that I had with Michael Nanchoff. Like I said, I really appreciate him being here. He was extremely generous with his time. He told us a lot of great stories. And I think that is one of the best things about talking with former players is that you get a little bit more behind the scenes than you would, just, I don't know, from reading news reports and whatnot, because they try to keep that as buttoned up as possible when they're active players for the most part, just because it's more professional that way. I think that we can all appreciate that in the corporate world. But once you leave and you can kind of, open up a little bit, not that he said anything that was crazy, but I loved hearing about the back and forth about how Neil Collins went from his teammate to his coach in the space of a day. So that was really awesome. And I would love to have him back on the podcast whenever he is available. So Michael Nanchoff, thank you again. And listeners, thank you for tuning in this week. We appreciate, of course, when you do that. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, anywhere that you are. We are at RBLR Sports. I am mostly on Twitter at this point, and my Twitter is RBLR James K. What about you, Carlos?
At Carlos TPA10 on Twitter. Admittedly, the past weekend of tweets has been almost exclusively about the Buccaneers. It's been so fun watching them do well in the playoffs.
There we go.
Obviously, I love all Tampa-based sports, but the Bucs was truly one of my first loves. So I'm really happy for everybody. It does the RBLR Bucs show as well. It's a fun time. And if you're not watching, the Bucs for whatever reason, big playoff game coming up this weekend.
That's right. Even I know that, and I am not your very common NFL fan, I will say. But if you would like to hear some analysis on that game before it comes out, or before it happens, I should say, please like and subscribe to our podcast, and you can listen to that RBLR Bucs one as well. You can get the full experience on YouTube, where you can see our interviews as they take place. Or if you just want to listen to them, you can do that on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app. You can do that on Apple or Google Podcasts, basically anywhere that podcasts are. So are we. So for another week in the books with some Rowdies news and a great interview with a former player, here it is. Come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.